It says we're live.
What's going on? We got one more open. One more. The Eastern Open, Bassmaster Opens. We're about to find out who's qualifying for the Elite Series and who's going back to the Opens Purgatory, I think is what Luke Duncan calls it.
Yeah, that's what he says.
And he's so cool. I just want to be a little more like Luke. If I could be a little bit more like Luke Duncan every day, you know?
That'd be cool. Pros is pretty slick.
He's got some good stuff. If you guys, go check out Luke Duncan's channel. He makes some great stuff, man. Hey, you guys get in here today, do me a favor. If y'all enjoy these podcasts, go ahead and hit that thumbs up for us. Also, hey, go ahead and drop a comment. Let us know who's here. We do these live. You guys can interact with us. We're going to talk about Opens, Elite Series qualifying standings, talk about what's going to happen, who's possibly in, who's definitely not in, all that good stuff. We're also going to get Elite Series Pro. Ed Loughran is going to talk to us tonight on the phone. He's a Bassmaster Classic qualifier for Ray Roberts coming up here pretty soon. A very interesting guy.
Yep.
He is actually a full-time operating attorney and a full-time Bassmaster Elite Series Pro. That's a pretty unique guy right there that can handle both of those loads. So he's a very, very nice man and a very interesting guy when you really start looking into everything he has going on and off the water. So should be great to talk to Ed. We're going to break down how he went about finishing in the top 5 at Lake Fork. Heck, he was in second place. He led the rest of the tournament that didn't include Patrick Walters in his live scope. He led it for 3 days. So we're going to talk to him about everything that went down at Lake Fork. And, of course, we'll talk to him about, just life on the Elite Series and what he's looking forward to as far as the Classic coming up. So a lot of good stuff to talk about tonight. And like we said, ask as many questions as you guys want to. We'll answer as many of them as we can get to. Chris, quit saying and tell me what's been going on in your world, dog.
You notice what's a little bit different about tonight's podcast? We're wearing jackets for the first time this year.
In my garage, we're wearing jackets.
Yeah, it's cold. Had a good Thanksgiving. Fried a turkey
That's
while wearing
right.
a turkey suit.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. You weren't as happy as Chris was because he literally wore a turkey suit while frying a turkey.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I thought about wearing it tonight on the podcast, but I decided to go with casual jacket with it. So, no, it's good. I ain't been fishing. It's just been busy, man. The holidays.
Well, that's a shame because you kind of missed your chance.
Yeah.
Because now we always like to talk about a little bit of the current fishing conditions and what's going on around our area up here around Lake Fork and Northeast Texas in general. The fall bite finally had kind of gotten pretty good. And if you guys watch the channel regularly, you will see tomorrow on the video kind of a good culmination of a great fall day, where it's actually me and a couple of guide customers, and we went ahead. They wanted to film it, so we went ahead and filmed it as a father and son. Man, we whacked them. Like, it was a great fall day. But that was at the end of some of that warm, stable weather we've been having. Now, starting today, and like tomorrow morning, it's going to be 31, and it's going to be blowing 20 sustained out of the north. And the next morning, it's going to be 27, and it's going to be blowing 15 sustained out of the north. And then the next day, it's going to be cold and raining and blowing. And then the next day, it's going to be cold. Like, we're not going to have a high in the 60s until it's going to get like right at 60 on like Sunday, I think.
Right.
We're not going to even see a high temperature of 60 degrees this week, which all the water temps are in the 60s. That means the water will be majorly cool trending every single day, 5-6 days in a row this week, man. This is going to be, if you go to power plant lakes, you might still catch them a little bit. But on cold water lakes, this is probably going to be one of the toughest weeks you'll fish, ever.
So I've always, through my years of fishing, I always enjoyed the fall bite. But that my favorite time of the year to fish is coming up here in about a month and a half.
Yeah, the deal is, so we talk a lot about transition. We talk a lot about pre-spawn. We talk a lot about post-spawn. Those are transition times. We talk a lot about the summer to fall transition. And we're always kind of, during those transition times, man, it can get kind of tough. Man, this might be the toughest transition of the entire year is the fall to winter. As far as there is a little period when they're going through that fall to winter transition, when you spread them out, get them moving into different areas and they're not quite grouped up yet, and the water's cooling off that dramatically, so their metabolisms, they've been feeding, they're fat. You'll see on Monday the fish we're catching are so fat they've been feeding, and so they're full, and then their metabolism just falls through the floor, just bottoms out because the water temps are dropping so fast. When that happens, man, that creates a very difficult situation. One of the reasons that I love a jig right now, starting right now, because when those fish start moving, creek channels are great places to find them. Creek channels are a great highway for them, and creek channel bends and junctions are a very good stopping place for a few fish when they are transitioning. And when it starts getting colder, those fish will pull out of that shallow flat and drop into that creek channel to bury themselves in kind of the most relatively deep water they can find. Right? Well, all that going on makes a jig. Plus, a jig, you can fish it so slow. You can you can leave it sitting dead still in that skirt, and those appendages on that crawler just still sitting there moving. Man, it makes it a very, very good option. And I will be having a jig in my hand a lot this week.
And less bites, bigger fish.
Yeah, but you're going to get less bites anyway in these conditions, so let's go ahead and throw a jig and get some big bites.
That's where I'm at with it also. I mean, it's coming fast.
It's the jig deal's not coming fast, it's here.
Well, I'm talking about this cold.
Yeah.
Just the whole, everything as a whole is coming fast for me. And this is when I really start getting excited about fishing.
Right. Well, we're not far away from, what's funny is I always see an uptick in fishing interest from the general public. There's a lot of you guys that are watching religiously here lately. Hey, we appreciate that. There's a lot of guys that are fishing still in the fall. But there's a lot of guys that are deer hunting, that are doing football or basketball or whatever with their kids. Their kids have been back in school, whatever. Holidays, people doing family stuff. It seems like every year, though, right when we get past Christmas and New Year, as soon as we hit the first week of January, man, people really start thinking about fishing. Whether they're actually getting out and fishing yet or not, they're thinking about fishing.
Start getting that itch.
More people start watching the content we produce. More people start getting involved. They start, and you know this from helping us with phone calls with the guide business. The phone calls increase, the messages increase.
That's right.
Everybody kind of after January 1st starts really thinking about fishing, and it's here, man. It's a month away. At this point, we're a month away from. It may not be springtime, prime time fishing yet, but we're a month away from that time of season when we start gearing up and going that direction.
Right. I guess too, in the past, I've been known to, from about opening day of rifle season through January, I've been known to chase them little green-headed birds around.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, you're a duck hunter.
So that's why. When duck season ends, I fall right back into my favorite time of year to fish, and then I get to fish it all the way through the spring and early summer, and it just kind of fit well for me. But last couple of years, I've been trying to get out a little more. Get my butt whipped a little bit in the fall, but that's all right.
That's all right. That's all right.
They move around.
Let's see if we can answer a couple questions, and we didn't put Ed's phone number.
No, I gotta grab that.
Go grab the other phone.
we double messing up.
It's the most unprofessional podcast you'll ever see. I'll tell you one thing that was pretty funny. One thing that was pretty funny was, I forgot. I was going to tell you something, I forgot. Here's a comment right here, good comment. I live on Lay Lake, and I am not getting in my boat until Wednesday. I don't blame you, bro. It's going to be tough. And, dude, those guys that are fishing that open, we're going to talk about that later tonight after we talk to Ed, but the last open for the Eastern Division is on Lay Lake. And those guys are going to face some absolutely brutal conditions during that deal. It's going to be bad. Bet things change this coming week with cold. Yeah. The bites are definitely going to change. Definitely going to change. Frank Firestone says he's here and ready for some winter fishing. I love winter fishing. We need to go on and get past this constant drop of water temps this week. Like we get past that.
Stabilize.
That's what we always talk about. It can be hot. It can be cold. It can be in between. But if it's stable, we can have success. And right now, we're not going to have a lot of stability in the water temps or anything like that. Everything's going to be changing and moving. And so that's going to create a little inconsistency, a little harder to pattern them. But once we get past that and it'll stabilize into those colder water temps, it should start to get to that good winter fishing where you can get a group of them living in that creek channel bend. And you can go there every day and catch them and a little more consistent. And you find a few right bends and it can be a really successful day. And there's other things as well, too. Some offshore fish, some bridge piling fish. I catch a lot of bridge piling fish in the wintertime. Suspended fish on the main lake, all that kind of stuff. We just need to get past the change and get to the stability, and it'll get better.
Yeah, because, when they get shocked like they're about to, they swim around looking like this emoji.
Yeah. The funny thing is that I'm sitting here talking about how tough it's about to be, but, man, it's been good. It's been pretty good. I've
noticed, I've been seeing a lot more
there's
from
been
everybody.
Some bad days, like when you're on the bad side of a cold front or whatever, but overall, the last couple weeks has been pretty good fishing. Mm-hmm.
It seems like every year the fall bite kind of
peaks around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's every year.
Folks are always like, when's the best time to come? Let me tell you one of the best times to come in my experience. The weekend before and the week of Thanksgiving. Yeah. Traditionally, for whatever reason, maybe it's just my fishing style, whatever. Before I was guiding, man, when I was fishing out of a plastic boat, the first 40-pound bag I ever caught on the best 5 was the Saturday before Thanksgiving in an 8-foot plastic boat. That was the first time I caught a 40-pound best 5. It was 42 pounds. I mean, it was crazy. Like, for whatever reason, the weekend before and the week of Thanksgiving has, not every single year, but most of the time is really, really good fishing in this region. And not just on Lake Fork, on all of our lakes around here. All of our lakes around here.
I've seen lately Lake Palestine's been hot. And I can't tell you the last time I said that.
I've noticed fish in the Highland Lakes like Travis and Belton are not as vulnerable to cold conditions. Do you agree? Well, I've never fished Travis or Belton. I haven't fished a lot of those lakes. One thing I'll tell you is, A, you're further south, but you do still get cold. But B, those lakes have not been stocked and influenced with Florida strain bass nearly as much.
Right.
And I think that's probably what you're seeing. 1,000% you get away from Florida strain bass. All other species of bass, or they handle cold front conditions much better. Spotted bass, smallmouth, northern strain largemouth, all of them handle these cold conditions better. There's something about that Florida strain bass, man, that they're notorious for. They just don't do very well in cold front conditions. Like, you go to Florida and you get a cold front, and it's not cold very often in Florida.
Right.
But if you're there when it is cold, dude, there's guys talking about it's hard to catch a fish, hard to get a bite, and that's just the way it is. Florida strain bass don't like it.
And they always used to fish in Florida in February.
But it's not cold.
Oh, I understand that, but it doesn't,
Right, but they're spawning there already because it's so warm there all the time. It's just not cold.
Just the way my mind works. Like, it's crazy.
What you don't realize is you're down there fishing, Florida in February, and you're wearing flip-flops and shorts because it's 75 outside.
But you've seen tournaments where a minor cold front has come through, and I'm talking about a minor cold front. We're talking about a 10-degree temperature swing, and them fish are just, it's a completely different ballgame, dude.
And in East Texas especially, the closer you are to Athens, the fishery center, Tyler's where the fishery center originally was.
That's right.
This East Texas area, man, they've stocked a lot of Florida strain bass in all these lakes around here. And then, of course, natural reproduction, Florida strain bass have reproduced and spread throughout all these lakes. And there's a heavy, heavy Florida strain influence in East Texas. Why we get so many big fish in East Texas and all these lakes. But it's also why, man, they can be...
Fickle is a good word.
Fickle. That's right.
You could say we're kind of spoiled, though, so I'm not going to complain.
Jonathan Bowl, that's a great comment. John, from Broken Bow originally, he's up there right now. He says, we got Florida strains in Broken Bow, and when a cold front hits, I go chase the big spots instead because it shuts the Floridas down completely. That's real. I think it's about, man, listen, I like the current conditions talk. We're talking, we're chatting it up. I know I told Ed at the time we were going to call him, so we need to get Ed on the phone, and I got to get you his phone number. You guys bear with me. I'm going to have to turn off for just 1 second. I'll be right back. Hopefully we're back. You guys comment if we're still live.
Hello?
Mr. Ed Loughran, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Billy?
Man, I'm doing great, brother. It's great to be able to talk to you now. I really appreciate you coming on here and do this. I got my buddy Chris Blackman. He helps me host these podcast contraptions that we do.
Okay.
Listen, we got to start this off right. We have a routine that I've been getting away from the last couple times we've had guests. But you're gonna be the lucky soul that we're gonna reintroduce our routine to. There's 2 questions that we're gonna ask you to kind of break the ice. The first one is, and this is gonna be an interesting answer from you because you're like a professional guy, like you're an attorney, like you got.
Yeah, exactly.
You handle like serious business. You ain't like a lot of us fishermen that are just kind of like idiots that go fish. Like you're a smart dude that does real things. But I gotta ask you, Biggie or Tupac?
I would say Biggie.
Biggie.
He's one of the few that's branched out and went with Biggie.
Yeah.
All
that
right.
may be a geographical thing. Ed's from the Midwest, right?
East Coast.
What's that?
He said East Coast.
East Coast.
You're from the East Coast. You live in the Midwest now, right?
No, I live in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, man, I was thinking you were up in Chicago. I apologize. Okay. Yeah, well,
No.
East Coast, so no doubt you should go with Biggie. That's where you should go. Chris, you want to ask him the other one?
All right, Mr. Ed, I got you. The next one is, if you could bring back a hairstyle, what hairstyle would you bring back?
Huh. Man, you guys got some stumpers here. What kind of hairstyle would I bring back? I mean, I guess, there are a couple people running around with it, but the flat top, like from the 50s, little Randy Howell look.
Randy Howell flat top. That's a very original answer. Nobody has gone with the Randy Howell flat top.
Everybody goes with the mullet. They don't make it real fun.
I know. All these things, rednecks fishing, all want the mullet. Yeah. The mullet's kind of back, though, I think.
Oh, it's not kind of. It's back. Like, my tournament partner, his 3 kids had a mullet earlier this year. So, yeah it's back.
No doubt.
It is back. There's no doubt.
Well, man, what has been going on in the world of Richmond, Virginia attorney / professional bass fisherman since a few weeks ago at Lake Fork?
Well, since I got done at Lake Fork, I drove straight home and started working, basically. And I've been doing that since. I haven't, often with me, I don't really get out to fish much in between tournaments. I bet I fished the least of anybody on the Elite Series. I ran the boat yesterday, actually, just to make sure something was working right. But other than that, I've just been working, getting some of my rental property straight that I have, and just hanging out with the family over Thanksgiving. And that really has been about it. Talking to some sponsors, trying to make sure everything is good for next year, and kind of getting ready for the Classic this evening. I've been sitting here, as I often do, in my office at home, looking at Google Earth with the Navionics on my phone and marking spots to check at Lake Ray Roberts in March.
That's right. That's another big congrats to you, man. Qualified for the Bassmaster Classic coming up on Ray Roberts in March, right down the road. From here, I'm gonna try and catch up and holler at you whenever that goes on. I'm gonna try and get over there as much as possible. I've got to check my schedule because you know how being a fishing guide is. Like March, especially that time of March, like we book up way in advance. So
that's right.
I've already got my entire month of March booked, so I've got to see how much I can finagle and get away to come see you guys over there. But I want to get over there and visit with you, and I want to watch you guys fish over there, man. That's going to be a great event. And how big of a deal is that for you to have qualified for a Bassmaster Classic?
It's a very big deal. It's something I got introduced to bass fishing back when I was 12 or 13. I had fished a little before that, but no one in my family fished, and where I grew up, there were no bass fishermen to speak of. So, I've been dreaming of it for a long time, 37, 38 years, and made a run at trying to fish pro back in the 90s, failed, and, so it's nice to have a chance after all these years to actually make it.
Yeah, man, it's awesome, dude. And so this was your first year competing on the Elite Series level. Now, just to keep things absolutely real here, I am a fan of the sport of bass fishing, obviously. I'm passionate about it. I love doing it. But with everything that's gone on in the world of professional fishing, there was quite a few guys that came to the Bassmaster Elite Series that I didn't know about. And in all honesty, you were one of them. So give us a little bit of your story. Like, how'd that end up going about? How'd you end up on the Elite Series that year when everything went crazy with the new Bass Pro Tour and, all the different changes in rosters? How is it that Ed Loughran ended up on the Bassmaster Elite Series?
Yeah, I mean, it was my second year this past year. And the first year, I got in through the Opens. I fished the Opens probably for, I guess, 6 years or so. And I missed making the Elites by one spot one year, by 2 spots another year. So I was always dancing around making it.
Right.
And they just never quite went down to 7th spot, or 8th spot, depending on the given year. But then when all the guys left and went over to the Bass Pro Tour, I happened to be in 9th or 10th place that year. And so I was one of the guys that got the call. They really didn't go that far down.
Right.
Right. There were a good number of guys that stayed. There were some guys from FLW like the Johnstons, Gussie, and several other guys, Canterbury and Airy and all those guys. They came over. So there were about, I think, probably 20, maybe 22 Opens anglers. And, the Opens are extremely tough tournaments, and there are guys on there that no one's ever heard of that are really, really good.
Absolutely.
And you see that with some of the guys coming out. Now, some don't do that well because I'm fortunate in that where I grew up, there are a lot of diverse fisheries. There's different kinds of tidal water in Virginia. There's 3 different major lakes in Virginia that are all different. And so, I got a pretty broad basic knowledge, but some of the guys coming out of the Open, sometimes depending on where they're coming from or the given year where the tournaments are, they kind of may not have a lot of experience on smallmouth, or maybe they don't have a lot of experience on southern and poundmouth. But for the most part, the guys that come out of the Opens are pretty darn good.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I ended up there.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Opens is, and we've talked about this before. I mean, until that deal kind of happened, it opened up a few more invites like you talked about. Man, qualifying, it was like you had 3 tournaments, you had 9 days, and it was like if you had one bad day out of 9, you just pretty much didn't qualify the way the old Opens qualifications work.
People used to say that to me. They said, man, you just can't have a bad day. And I always correct them because that's not true. You can't have a bad morning. You can't slip a bit.
Yes.
Because, you have to basically finish in the top 20 of each one.
Right.
And that's about where it ends up. That's about the numbers over the years. And so finishing in the top 20 of an Open 1,000 miles from your house where there's 50 killer locals, there's 50, guys trying to make the elites that are incredible Opens anglers, great regional anglers, and then there's typically 30 or 40 full-time pros, and then there's the rest of the field. But, I mean, you've got 120 killers at any given one of those Opens that you are competing against. It is very difficult to make it. I mean, you look at some of the people this year that did not or are not going to make it.
Right.
And there's some incredible fishermen there, guys that, they're going to make it, I think. But it's a rough road. You can't have a mechanical issue. You can't have depth finder go down. Things have to go right, and you have to fish well. It's terribly difficult.
100% true. And from a local perspective, we got to see that, before all this shakeup happened, we got to see that with a guy that's fishing with you out there right now, Lee Lovesey.
Yeah.
He went through a very similar scenario to what you described for yourself, where I know there was one year where he missed qualifying by 1 spot. And I believe it was the very next year he was actually qualified all the way up until the last tournament and then had a bad tournament and dropped out.
Yep.
And I mean, it was so much of a thing that everybody thought he was going to qualify. Like all the sponsors were lined up. He was ready to roll to the Elite Series next year. Everything was good to go. And then he had, just a bad day or whatever at the last tournament, and it didn't work out. And it was very similar when this shakeup, the year the shakeup happened. He was just it was like the 3rd year in a row, I think it was, where he was just a couple spots out of qualifying. He was close to qualifying, but he wasn't in the standings. And then the craziness happened, and he got a similar deal as you got, where they just reached down a couple places in the Opens point standings and gave him an invite. And, of course, he accepted it. And as you can tell from Lee, I mean, he goes out his first tournament. I think he top 10 his very first event. And he's kind of hit the ground rolling and now has a win. And in your own right, dude, I want to talk to you a little bit about your tournament at Lake Fork because, everybody saw the Patrick Walters show.
Sure.
But there was 84 – is it 80? There's 85 of y'all out there?
It is. A couple dropped out for various reasons.
Okay.
Mark Menendez had a back issue, and a couple other guys had COVID or other issues. So, yeah, but it's 85.
Yeah, so there was 84, 82, whatever other great Elite Series anglers that were fishing a very competitive, very interesting tournament that didn't involve Patrick Walters because he was just running away with it, so to speak. But you led 3 of the 4 days, like you were in second. You led the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good tournament. I had a terrible practice, as seems to happen so often. And then, you have just a little bit. There's just one little opening. And for me, I had gotten a couple of bites, 2.5 pounders or 2 pounders on a couple docks. And it was, they were the first 3 or 4 in a row of docks, a long row of docks. And I had a terrible practice, so I said, well, I guess I'll just go up there. Maybe I'll catch 11 or 12 pounds and then maybe get a little lucky. And so, because I really had almost nothing else. I mean, zero. And I went up there, and the first morning, I just had a great morning. And some of those, when you're practicing, as you know, you kind of go through cover kind of quick, and, you're not setting the hook on everything. And, you're sometimes pulling the fish up just to kind of get a look at them and hope they get off. But I went through in tournament mode, and, I was a little frustrated because another angler pulled about 4 docks ahead of me. And, and I was planning on going down the whole line. And I just said, well, I'll just stay here and outfish him and just try to cast better than he does, fish the docks differently. And I went down that row of docks, and I had, 21 pounds, including a 7 and a 4. And he left. He left after 1 or 2 docks. And so I just went down through there and ended up catching a good bag. But it's funny. A lot of times you hear people talk, at least in our tournaments, because I don't think we stick a lot of fish in practice. We try to avoid it if we can, most all of us. So a lot of us, we don't really know what we have. And if we get 1 or 2 bites, we're generally going to leave. So a lot of times you don't know what you have until you show up. And I certainly didn't. And I just, I like fishing docks. I like to think I'm pretty good at it. And I managed to make it last for 3 days. And then the last day, I could have had a good bag. A couple came off, and, a couple didn't get the bait. But ended up being a good tournament. Anytime you can get a top 10 and fish the last day on an Elite Series tournament, it's a good tournament.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, it was fun, and I talked to you a little bit after day 2 at the weigh-in, and one thing that you told me was like, it's like you weren't getting a lot of bites, but, man, you were catching the right kind. You were getting the right bites that, like you said, allowed you to get a 20-pound bag.
Yeah, a couple days, yeah.
Yeah, a couple 20-pound bags, and then day 3 was a little bit more of a struggle for you, and I saw you make an adjustment and kind of you caught some fish not on docks on day 3. Talk to us about what happened on day 3.
Yeah, so on day 3, I felt like probably my docks had maybe run their course. There might not be a lot left. And so I went and I fished them and a couple other little areas. And I ended up with an okay bag. I mean, it was a small bag for a third day, given what I was doing. And see, I had a number in my head that I had to get to, and that number was 39 pounds. Because I had looked at all the standings from before, when we were there before, at a different time of year. I had adjusted everything for what I thought the seasonal differences were. And I knew if I had about 39 or 40 pounds that I would make 30th place. And that was the number I had in my head. And I got that on the second day. So the third day, I almost didn't care what happened because I knew I had made the Classic because I was going to end up in 30th. So I fished my dock, didn't catch much. And then, I had talked to Patrick earlier, and another friend of mine in the tournament, he said that he was catching some along creek channels, just throwing on the standing timber, the shallow creek channels. So I went out and started doing that, and I instantly caught a 2 3/4 pound fish. And I said, oh, man, this is all right. And I go up the creek channel, nothing, and I come back, and I'm getting up to this one spot, and I tell the camera guy, so it's kind of funny, it's on video out there somewhere. I said, man, this right here, there should just be a big fish right here, because there were 2 or 3 thicker trees sort of clumped together, and then one offset, another one offset that was even bigger. I said, this is just the right kind of spot. I throw my chatterbait over there, and I catch 1/7. So, that summed up my whole week. I got a lot of big bites, and I think I just got a little bit lucky, but I'll take it.
Always, man. I love how you broke it down and you're like doing all the math and like you knew that if you caught that amount of weight, that's what you needed to qualify for the Classic, which was obviously a big point, a big goal of that last event for you. But I really love how you like had all the math figured out because like, bro, I would never be able to do all that math. Like I'd just be like, well, I gotta catch them, and I'm gonna catch them as good as I can every day and see what works out. But like I'm more of that philosophy where I'm just gonna put my head down and I'm gonna do what I can, and we'll see how it works out. And you had it all
Yeah.
figured out.
I had it. I think it ended up being pretty darn accurate because when we were there the previous year, I think it took 39 pounds to make 35th place, and I figured that this fishing was worse than it was last year, obviously. So I figured if I had 39 pounds, that would probably bump me up another 5 or 10 spots. And so if I finished 25 or 30th, based on what I figured was going to go on in the points, which ended up being accurate, that would be enough to squeak me in. But as it turned out, I rolled in there without too much of a problem. But that's kind of what I do at the end of the year. I mean, obviously, I want to catch as many fish as I can, try to win the tournament, but I at least I want to know what number I have to hit at the end of the year to make a championship, back in the day, or the classic in this instance.
Classic in this instance, which is just so awesome, man. And listen, I would want to know that too. I just don't know that I would have the ability to know that.
I'm sure you would.
But man, yeah. So that's a great breakdown of what went on for you at Lake Fork. I appreciate you taking time to do that with us. It was really cool to watch that whole event unfold in November. You said you mentioned that the fishing wasn't as good as it was the last time. Well, May is probably the most consistently good month around this area. Of course, I think everywhere in the country is pretty good in May. But for Lake Fork, May is probably the most consistent month as far as most days you go out in May, you're going to have a good day. Even, locals, weekend anglers can go out in May and have good results on Lake Fork in May. So for sure, the fishing is not going to be as good up and down throughout the entire field in November as it is in May. But and now I don't know. I've heard rumors that Texas Fest is not going to be at Lake Fork next year. Have you heard anything of that sort?
I haven't heard, but they haven't told us the schedule for next year. But I haven't heard anything. And typically, if they know we're going to be somewhere the following year, they'll tell us. Because we're with marshals and stuff that know the place a lot of times. And so, for instance, 2 years ago at Thousand Islands up at St. Lawrence, they said, hey, we're going to be here a couple more years, so don't get any info from your marshals after the tournament.
Right.
So, and so I haven't heard anything like that with Fork, so I don't know if it'll be at Fork, but I know it's been other places over the years.
It has. But, they had it started as the TTBC, Toyota Texas Bass Classic, and it started at Fork in like 2006 or 2007, 8, somewhere in there. And then it's been at Conroe several times. It's been at Ray Roberts, and even the other side, the other guys, MLF Bass Pro Tour. I know they're not coming to Fork next year. They're going to Rayburn, and don't know where you guys are going to end up. I've heard a rumor about Lake of the Pines for Texas Fest, which would be an awesome place to see you guys fish, because Lake of the Pines is, people ask me, what's the best overall lake outside of Lake Fork in East Texas? In Northeast Texas, Rayburn and Toledo are kind of different area of East Texas, but in Northeast Texas, in this immediate area, Lake of the Pines is probably the next best tournament bag fishery that we have.
Huh. I mean, how big is it? Is it same size as Fork, give or take? I mean, 20, 30,000 acres?
It might. I don't know the exact numbers. It might be just a touch bigger. It's very close in size to Lake Fork. And it's a very diverse fishery with a lot of deep structure and a lot of backwater. Like, it's a very diverse fishery. So it would be a fun place to see you guys get after. That's for sure, no doubt. I hope I'm not violating any information rules right now. I don't know.
No, I mean, there's no schedule out, and I haven't heard anything. So, that's not a problem. But it'd be interesting. I like going new places. I prefer to take my chances because so many of these guys, I mean, we go to Gunnersville, and these guys have been there 20 times, or they live there. Whereas I'm rolling down there for the first or second time in my life, and I'm getting my teeth kicked in a little bit,
Yeah.
So I like going places that people don't know. And at tough times of year, I tend to do better in those situations.
Pines will be a good one. Now, there's a few guys on the Elite Series that are from this area that would have a leg up on some folks. Lee would be one of them, of course. Brad Watley, I think, lives in Longview, which is where Lake of the Pines is.
I
So
gotcha.
there's a few of those guys that are out there fishing the Elite Series right now with y'all that are from this region that would. I mean, they've all. If you've lived
Yeah, they
here and been in the
fish, I'm
fishing
sure.
world, you fished that lake quite a bit. So, um,
Gotcha. Yeah.
well, man, that's awesome, dude. What? Tell me about the Classic. What is the thing you're looking forward to the most about March and Ray Roberts?
Well, with the research I've done, it certainly seems like some very, very big bags are possible.
Yes.
It looks like from these team tournaments that they have out there every year, about that time of year, 25-pound bags are, give or take, usually what win the thing, but that's team tournaments. So, I would expect probably 75 pounds to win the thing because someone's going to come in, it looks like, with a 30-pound bag, barring some kind of weather issue. And, so I'm looking forward to fishing the lake to some extent. Looking here at it on Google Earth like I am right now, it's got a lot of timber in it, and there's no boat lane chip that I can find.
No,
it looks like part of the lake might be difficult to get around if you don't know the place.
There's a big part of the lake that can be a challenge to navigate, no doubt, and there's not a. In Fork we have boat lanes chips and Rayburn, and a lot of lakes we have boat lanes chips, and there's buoys marked, and Ray Roberts has got none of that. But it does.
And that's what it looks like. And so I'm approaching it. One thing that I've gotten better with as I've gotten older is strategy in tournaments, and also just doing certain things on certain bodies of water at certain times of year. And so I'm looking at it, and there's some places that it looks very similar to a lake that I fish back here. Some areas of it and a certain pattern that I bet I'll be able to replicate down there that I bet will work if the conditions are right down there. So, that's the kind of stuff that I'm sort of looking for. But I'm going around the lake on Google Earth at the different lake levels, and taking a look at it and marking spots on my phone on my Navionics app, and that way when I get there I can just go and run the stuff and look around at it and see how that stuff's working. But so often when you do that, everything falls apart in about the first 3 hours, and you just end up winging it anyway. But that's just how tournament fishing goes.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, it's preconceived. I think that's one of the reasons that you get, like Lee, and I don't reference Lee because we're talking about Lake Fork so much, but
Sure.
you get guys on their local fisheries, and obviously, from outside looking in, you say, well, it's an advantage to have that local knowledge. Well, it is. But sometimes it's not, because if you look at what's going on with Lee at the last 2 times you guys have come here, man, he's had some tough days, and I see it with fishing guides on a lake. When you get a new guide that is from somewhere else, and he moves to Lake Fork and starts guiding on Lake Fork, and he's a good fisherman, it's like always a fresh set of eyeballs with a dude that's a proficient fisherman. He's gonna find something that's a little bit untapped, and is going to catch them a lot of times better than the more experienced local guy will, because he's looking at different water in a different way. And I think that's what happens to a lot of these guys that are on their home lakes, like Lee goes out the first day and catches 9 pounds. Man, and I know what he saw, like where he was and the way he described it. Like, he went to the area that is notorious for having the most numbers of big bass in the fall. That's where he went.
Right.
And he saw him one day in practice start feeding, and so he kind of locked in on that area day one, and then they didn't fire. And it ended up costing him, because he was looking at it with a little bit of that historical knowledge of where these big fish like to go on the lake, and it ended up biting him in the butt because there was other things going on that were better.
Yeah, and that does happen. I fished several opens here on the James, and I'm a good fit. The James River is the local river around here, in Richmond, and I'm a good angler out there. I'm competent, and I've always done consistently well, but I've never even made the final day. I usually finish about 20th in every one of them, and it's kind of, I think, because of what you said. I think having knowledge of a particular body of water will consistently get you, in a good spot, but it's usually somebody that's unfamiliar with the body of water that comes in and maybe fishes it without all those preconceived notions that Lee has or that I have on places that I fished a lot. And you just go and you fish the place and you find different stuff. It's I think it's consistent like that throughout the country. It's just kind of a common theme that happens to places. So someone like, Patrick Walters rolls in and finds something that, and either find something that nobody else did or exploit something better than everybody else did. So, I wasn't going to wander around out there and do that. I tried a little bit in practice doing that, and I just never got around them, I guess. But, I had a little bit of a different agenda after the first day or two of practice. I just needed to catch a few fish. So,
yeah, right.
I went to the bank.
Yeah, and your goal was to make sure, you want to catch them as good as you can and win the tournament, but you also wanted to make sure you qualified for the Classic, obviously.
Yeah, and I was one spot out going in, and so I knew that if I probably caught 12 pounds a day, I'd be close, but if I caught 13 pounds a day for 3 days, I would make it. I didn't know I was going to catch 40 pounds in 2 days or whatever I had.
That's awesome.
But, it worked out, but it was pretty impressive what Patrick did. So I was happy to see him win it. And I just like seeing somebody come up with something different and just be very dominant in the tournament. It happens so rarely nowadays that it's just impressive when it happens.
Yes, it is. What happened was very impressive. And, as a guy that fishes there so many days over the last, several years now, it was one of my most enjoyable weekends that I can remember in a long time on Fork, and I never even touched a fishing pole. And I felt like I learned so much watching a lot of you guys, and including yourself, and including, Rick Clunn's day one performance, and all the highlights that happened in the tournament, especially Patrick Walters. In some of the areas that he was fishing that were just pretty nondescript areas that I wouldn't really think of as areas to hold a big population of fish, but boy, they held enough. Good night. It was
sure did. He smoked them.
It was a very eye-opening experience to see that, and that was one thing when I talked to you after the weigh-in on day two, when I was talking about how maybe you were still in the hunt because it's Lake Fork and anything can happen. You're like, no, bro. Patrick Walters ain't slipping. It's not gonna happen. And you were right, man. That kid is tenacious, and he is very, very efficient and effective. And he's a stone cold killer of a closer when it comes to fishing a tournament.
Yep, and that's just the way he is. I've got to know him, fairly well this year. We talk outside of the tournaments and stuff, and when he told me after the first day, because I went and found him, and I was like, man, what are you doing? And he told me, he showed me the bait and told me what he was doing, and I said, oh, that's killer. You're in a different world. And after the second day, which is when I saw you, and he had increased his lead substantially, I knew that there wasn't going to be any let up on that, because that's just the type of pattern. I believed that was the type of pattern. If you got on it, it would last multiple days. You may be able to recreate it in different areas of the lake. And if you put someone like him on something like that, with that kind of lead after 2 days, you probably got some problems trying to catch him. So.
Well, y'all did. Y'all had some problems. He had that deal to himself for the most part. And it was something that he could duplicate in different areas of the lake. And one thing that I did was on day two, when I left, or maybe it was day four, one of the days when I was out there, kind of when I quit kind of watching guys, and I tried to keep my distance from everybody and not interfere with anybody that was doing anything. But what I did was I started running around and looking in some areas that I hadn't seen anybody fishing in over the tournament, and I started kind of graphing them and just riding around, idling, looking on my electronics of areas that I thought were similar to some of the areas that Patrick was fishing. And what I saw was he could have duplicated that, because a lot of those areas that were similar seemed to have a lot of fish and some really big fish in them, according to what I was seeing on the electronics. And of course, I didn't fish for any of them because I didn't want to interfere with anything. He might show up there the next day or whatever. But it was very, very interesting to see that. And then it was cool to kind of go out there the next week and not fish necessarily where Patrick was fishing, but fish the same type of stuff. And I don't run a live scope yet. I should, but I don't. I've always been a Lowrance guy. I don't have a live scope, but I will be having a live scope soon. But even with
the reality is you for certain types of water, certain bodies of water, it's probably just about required if you want to be competitive. I have a Humminbird 360, and that's probably a better all-around device.
Right.
But but I don't think fishing the elites that I would be without both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic that's happening now. And what was cool to me was even after, not having a live scope, just kind of side imaging some places and stuff and marking fish and then going back and fishing them the next week, you were able to go in there and not catch them the way Patrick did by any means, but you could catch some good fish fishing that way in those areas without having to see them on the live scope. And it opened up a lot of areas on the lake that I wasn't even thinking about by watching what he did that weekend. So it was really cool.
That is pretty cool. I mean, that's the neat thing about guys coming from out of town and having a big tournament there. You get to see some different stuff, and areas get opened up that you might not have really been messing with too much, and it makes the lake a little bigger.
Absolutely. Now, you alluded to one thing a minute ago, and I kind of wanted to ask you about this because it seems like to me the world of professional fishing, even on my level and certainly on you guys' level, the sponsor aspect of it is changing pretty rapidly with all the live coverage that we have now. And with all these different electronics and kind of each one of them having their strengths, forever and ever, it was a guy who was brand loyal, and whether he was or he wasn't, you never knew he was fishing anything other than what he was sponsored by.
Right.
And nowadays there's more guys. Jacob Wheeler's been very, outspoken about it with his electronics, and obviously Patrick was running all the electronics, and so many guys are running multiple brand electronics, and even guys, you can't hide the baits you're fishing anymore very well. So if you're sponsored by Strike King and you're throwing Rapala or Megabass or whatever,
right,
everybody's going to see it. So where do you see the sponsor deal of the game? How do you see that transforming over the next few years?
Well, from a bait perspective, I mean, I've known John Cruz since he was a kid, since he was 14 or 15 years old, and I've been around since the inception of missile baits, and I throw missile baits a lot. But he knows I throw other baits.
Of course he does.
Because he doesn't offer every single thing on the planet. So all he asks, and frankly, all my other sponsors typically ask, is just don't promote another bait. Don't go and say, hey, I'm catching them on this Rage Craw on the back of my jig, as opposed to a Missile Baits twin turbo or a D-bomb or something. So, most sponsors are pretty realistic about it. They know that they don't offer every single thing. When you're talking about baits, and pretty much just baits. But when you get to other items, like electronics is an unusual situation right now. I don't think that you can do everything you need to do to compete at our level without using mixed brands. I think that the 360, Mega 360, and the side imaging of Humminbird, I think that's the best out there. Garmin doesn't have a 360. They have the live scope, but in the perspective mode, when you flip it sideways, that gives you a cone and it's live, but it doesn't give you as detailed an image of the 360, which is a straight bird's eye view from 30,000 feet.
Right.
Lowrance, they supposedly have the best down imaging and supposedly have the best mapping. I don't have a lot of recent experience with Lowrance. So those sponsors, there's been a lot of upheaval with people that were, past tense, were sponsored by them. Mm-hmm. Because they, if you were running just one brand, you were fighting with one arm tied behind your back. And I watched it because at these tournaments, I typically sleep 5 or 10 feet from John Cruz. and he had an extremely difficult year this year. Some of it, and he's written about it, some of it is attributed to depth finders and electronics. He was straight Lowrance, and I couldn't even help him because he honored his contract and did not do anything but use his Lowrance depth finders this year. And I couldn't do anything to help him in some tournaments because I can't very well say, well, on St. Clair, well, here, just come out here in 17, 19 feet of water, 5 miles offshore in the middle of the lake, and just wander around and scan, and when you see a fish, throw at him. I mean, he can't do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the equipment to do it. So that's, so, and at Champlain, I can't say, well, here, go and find a big boulder with your 360 that's 80 feet away, and then go in and, zoom in on it with your live scope, and then throw over there and catch the fish you're looking at. And if there's not one there, after 2 or 3 casts, move on. So, it was frustrating not being able to help them a little bit, but I think a lot of people are, I won't say hostage to their electronics, but, it's something that if you don't have everything right now, I think you're limiting yourself, and I don't like to limit myself. I mean, you can look at someone like Brandon Palaniuk, and this is a very clear and I think pretty interesting example. He's a hummingbird guy, and that's what he is, and that's what he's going to be, I believe, probably forever. He won the Champlain event, and, I was fishing close to him, and I made the last day there as well, but he was fishing boulders. On the 360, you can see boulders clear as day, and up there, those fish are very object-oriented, and so you see a boulder, you throw at it, from 30 feet away, 40 feet away, so you're not on top of it, and you'll either catch fish or you won't. He can see some fish on the 360. It's difficult, but he's very good at it. So he's a great smallmouth fisherman, won that tournament, and because of how those fish live up there in 30 feet of water, give or take, they live on those boulders and on objects. So you can deal with a 360. You don't need a Garmin.
Right.
But then we went to St. Clair, and he's a terrific smallmouth fisherman. Awesome. But that 360 was almost useless at St. Clair.
Right.
And I think he caught 12 or 13 pounds a day. I think almost everybody in the top 40 was out there doing what I was doing, which was, and me and Patrick Walters actually were, fishing right next to each other, talking. And you were out there in that deep water scanning, and you had to see those fish. And there's nothing out there. There's no contours. There's no objects. There's nothing. Wow. So Brandon didn't do well, even as good a smallmouth fisherman as he is. And I think it might have been because of the Garmin, or lack of Garmin.
Right.
So, each thing is a tool. It's no different than, having a different club for 150 yards and having a driver to knock it off the tee. So you got to have these different tools to compete at this highest level.
Yeah, at that level where you guys are going to so many different types of fisheries, like you alluded to. One tournament, seeing objects is the deal. And the next tournament, you got to be able to mark them and see them where they are, where they're roaming. And, man, I totally empathize with your story about John Cruz and the Lowrance deal, because my last boat, when I ordered it, I actually ordered it with 2 Lowrances and a Garmin live scope. And then while my boat was getting built, right before I got it, I got a deal with Lowrance, and so I canceled the live scope and didn't put it on there. And I've totally regretted it. I mean, I was really appreciative of Lowrance for giving me the deal they gave me and everything, but I would happily give the money back to have had the live scope all year at this point, to be honest with you. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Wheeler, and I don't know Jacob Wheeler, but I know one of the guys who travels with him very well. And, I mean, he runs all 3, I believe. So, he says that the down imaging and mapping of Lowrance is the best, side imaging and 360 of Humminbird is the deal, and then the live scope is obviously the deal. And all 3 of those used together is what he believes is the way to go. I mean, I personally I have the Humminbird and the Garmin on mine, and I haven't been, and doubt I will be under contract with any of them. So that's why I don't have a problem doing it, because I buy them myself.
You know what I think is going to happen is you're going to have. I think that electronics deals are about to change the way they're structured. So instead of having John Cruz being on a deal with Lawrence, what you'll have is you'll have a shop, a place that sells electronics, that carries all the brands, a boat dealer. And these guys on y'all's level will get deals from those boat dealers, from those electronic shops, and they'll get the deal to promote that company's that company's store, that company's product, that company's sales, and then they can get all the brands they want and still get a sponsorship deal from like a shop.
I think that makes sense, and I think that likely will happen that way with some people. But there are a few people that I know that have deals with the depth finder companies that are lucrative enough,
right,
to where it makes sense for them to stay there. Because frankly, with the 360, you could have done just fine, except St. Clair, and maybe Fork. But Fork, there were other things going on. I mean, we all look at what Patrick Walters did, and that was sort of an anomaly in that given tournament.
Sure.
But other people could have done it, but no one else did, and plenty of people got live scope.
Right.
So, it's
well,
so
Polinick had a very good tournament using the 360 at Fork.
What's that?
Polinick had a very good tournament at Lake Fork using 360.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I basically used nothing. Doing what I was doing. Now, look, you can shoot a live scope under a dock, and you can see if there's fish hanging around it. It's hard to, under most docks, identify if there's a bass under it or something. But if you see some life under it, that always is a little bit reassuring to at least see that. But with a 360, you can do an awful lot with it. So that's why I think it's a better all-around tool myself. But it's a live scope and the 360 are really my preference and what's on my boat.
Man, this has been a right up our alley. We like to go in depth on stuff, and I think you've seen some of our content, so you kind of know the style of what we do. We talk really, really in depth about techniques and tactics, and so this has been right in our wheelhouse, and this has been a great discussion, especially this last part about the electronics. I've really, really enjoyed having your time tonight, and I can't thank you enough for it, Ed. I appreciate it.
Sure, yeah, no problem. And anytime that you want to talk to me, I'm typically available in the evenings without a problem, and hopefully I will have a couple of good tournaments to start next year and then roll into the Classic with some momentum and do real well in that tournament. That would be pretty cool. So hopefully I can. Texas has been good to me so far, so maybe I have a thing for Texas.
We'll be pulling for you.
Absolutely, we will. And I'll tell you what, man, if you get a chance to have any extra days outside of your Classic practice while you're down here, let me know, and we'll get together and we'll go hit some little small lake somewhere and go have a good time.
Yeah, I actually would like to do that. They have us down there for quite a while, and there are a couple of days that right now are unaccounted for. So I don't know what they have in store for us those days, but yeah, absolutely. If I have the time, I will 100% get down there. I really appreciate you coming up to me at the tournament at Lake Fork, and this has been fun. And again, anytime. I'm happy to talk about anything.
I appreciate it, Ed. Hey, have a great night, brother. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Take it easy, guys. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
That was great.
That's about as in detail as
yeah.
you want to get there, buddy.
That's the thing that I really liked the most about Ed Loughran was when I met him, he was just such a nice guy, and just like what you just heard over the last almost hour at this point.
Right.
He just loves to talk fishing and has no problem talking to you, and he's very good at talking to you and making you feel like you're not talking to an Elite Series pro. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, he emulates what this channel's all about.
There's a little bit of an air that comes with somebody when they're an Elite Series pro that whether they act like it or not, you're a little hesitant to talk to them about certain things, or you just don't want to push the envelope with anybody that you are seeing as that high profile. Has nothing to do with that person.
Right.
It has to do with their position and the way you see their position. But Ed is very good, very, very, very good, as anybody I've ever met about when he talks to you, you forget that he is what he is.
He's just a dude.
He's
like
on the
us.
top level of
Yeah.
bass fishing. You have no idea that he's just a guy, but now, obviously the knowledge is there and all that, but he makes you feel very comfortable talking to him, and he's a very nice guy. So really appreciate that from Ed Loughran. Man, we've got a ton of stuff still to cover. It's going to be a long one tonight.
He is basically he's basically the dude you would want to be if you were on that level.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Well, and dude, he's an attorney. He's got like rental problems. Like that dude, that's an accomplished individual. He's got it all going on.
He don't sleep much.
Cedar Creek Freak says, I heard Lowrance has something coming out soon that will compete with Garmin, but it don't matter to me. I can't afford either one.
I've actually seen that.
I've seen, yeah. So ironically, not long after the Lake Fork tournament, Humminbird and Lowrance both announced their live forward imaging products.
See, here's the deal.
It doesn't look like they're going to be as good.
So here's the deal. You can, when you run a demo mode, okay, you're obviously going to do whatever you can. And I'm not knocking Lowrance, Humminbird, nothing. But when you're running a demo and you're creating a brochure to send out to people, you're going to make
the best
it.
version.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be 100% the best version that you can physically show and say, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
I just don't think.
Did you see the picture of the Lowrance image
Yes.
on the fort?
Mm-hmm. So.
I love Lowrance.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of Lowrance.
It's not as good.
Yeah,
Like, the image that they showed in their advertising is not as good as what the Garmin's do.
Since Garmin got on the scene of bass fishing electronics, it seems like they're 10 years ahead of everybody in everything they've done. I mean, just being honest. And so it's gonna take those two companies.
Well, just with this real-time forward-facing sonar.
Correct.
Listen, the rest of the Garmin electronics, like the sonar and their mapping and all, it's not as good as the other guys.
Right. Like Lowrance, I've always.
The only thing that Garmin is better at is the real-time forward-facing transducers. That's what they're good at. That's what they're better than the competition at. But the rest of the functionality of because they have units that have down scan and side scan and sonar and mapping, they're not up to par with Humminbird or Lowrance in all those other categories. And that's why what I was talking about, you kind of got to run all of them now.
Yeah. So do you think? So here's what I foresee happening. I foresee seeing kind of a Heinz 57 variety of graphs on a lot of pro boats.
So what's fixing to happen on mine?
I mean, and why wouldn't you, right? Unless they're just taking care of you so well.
The only reason that you don't do that is that you are willing to sacrifice your ability to be as good of an angler as you can be.
Right.
If you want to catch them as good as you possibly can catch them, then you have to run different brands of graphs.
I agree. Fair.
Just my opinion, folks.
So.
Just my opinion.
These boats are figuring to be rolling around with about $20,000 of electronics.
Probably about $10,000 worth of batteries to run them on.
Yeah, no kidding. So how many? All right, so the first boat brand that comes out with a compartment that can hold 10 batteries, that'll be the most sold boat in 2021.
You want me to tell you that the big winner in all this? The big winner in all this is these new guys. these new guys with these lithium battery companies.
Oh, that's
because
true.
you can put more of them in there and they weigh so much less.
Yes.
These guys that are working on this lithium technology, and there's some really good lithium products that are out there nowadays that they don't have the hazard issues they had when they first came out. They fixed all that. The lithium battery companies are the ones that are about to win because you're almost going to have to go to running lithium batteries or you're going to have so much electronic equipment, so much battery equipment, it is going to slow your boat down.
So aren't they like a quarter of the weight of a regular battery?
They're extremely light compared to a regular battery.
Yeah.
And so if you need to go from 4 to 6 batteries or whatever it may be, well, that's going to make a difference. And if you've got 5 or 6 graphs versus 2, that's going weight always makes a difference. Like when you're driving a bass boat, as skinny as you are, dog, like when you're in the passenger seat and then when you get out, I can notice a difference.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Immediately in the speed and the quickness and everything in the bass boat. So, yes, batteries make a difference. These old wet gel batteries, like they are heavy.
Dude, I remember.
These electronics units have weight to them.
I remember the first gel battery I ever bought when I bought my Cobra. You remember my Cobra back in the day? Yeah. I went to pick that sucker up, about threw my back out. I was like, God, dog, these things are heavy. The old Optima gel coat.
They are definitely heavy, man. Well, that was great. I want to move on. I want to start talking about the Opens because we've been going a long time tonight. Appreciate all you guys sticking with us tonight so much. Let's talk about, it's about to be a very, very interesting week of bass fishing. So for this next week, you guys, we're going to get to watch this last Open at Lay Lake for the Eastern Division. Central, done. But the AOY and the Eastern Division are still up for grabs.
There's still wiggle room.
And there's still some very, very interesting things. It's crazy that we got tournament fishing in December that's this captivating with this much implications on the top level for next year. So very, very cool. You want to go ahead and pull some of those standings up for us, please?
Pull them.
So the Central, they're done competing in the Central. The top 4 places go like this: Jason Christie, Greg Hackney, Kenta Kimura, and Mark Frazier.
But
Here's what's interesting about that. All 4 of those guys are trying to qualify for the Elite Series. Well, the top 4 get in from each division, but the Angler of the Year also gets in. Jason Christie is leading Angler of the Year.
and Mark Frazier's in second.
And Mark Frazier's in second. That's first and fourth. So Brian New is in third. Now, we're going to talk about Brian New later on when we talk about the East. But it could go either way. It's not an unsurmountable lead in the Angler of the Year for Christie or Frazier and some of the guys below him. But if Jason Christie or Mark Frazier win Angler of the Year, that opens up one more spot from the Central Division, which is going to be Daryl Gleason, our local guy, fishing guide from Toledo Bend. We love Daryl. We're pulling for him. We're hoping, with fingers crossed, when you watch this open, hope that Jason Christie or Mark Frazier win Angler of the Year after Lay Lake is over with.
Because Central's done fishing.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that happens, that means Daryl Gleason, because that pulls one from the Central, opens up another spot from the Central, and that means Daryl Gleason qualifies for the Elite Series. That will be awesome. We were really hoping to see that. Daryl's a guy that all you guys want to pull for. He's a great guy. That's kind of the big deal about what's going on in the Central. Hit me on Central out there, Chris.
Oh, I just wrote. That was Central.
Yeah, and so that's it. So there's no other guys, and that's done. That's the story of the Central Bassmaster Open Circuit. In the Eastern, a little bit different. Patrick Walters is leading in the East. Well, Patrick Walters is already on the Elite Series. So the next 4 you got Joshua Strackner, Pat Schlapper, Scott Martin, and Timmy Tompkins. Right now, as things stand, those are the 4 guys that are going to qualify. Justin Atkins is directly below Timmy Tompkins. So Justin Atkins moves 1 spot up in the points. He qualifies. I believe he is not on the Bass Pro Tour roster for 21. So if he does not move up a spot and does not qualify through the Eastern Opens,
He ain't got a home.
he goes back to the Opens in the FLW maybe. I guess he could somehow wiggle into the FLW, but he's going to go. And does he want to go back to FLW? Because FLW is part of MLF.
Right.
Basically, this is a huge, this Lay Lake deal is a big, big, big event for Justin Atkins, who is one of the most promising young anglers we have, similar to Patrick Walters, a guy that's won on some different levels. We all fell in love with him at Lake Fork when he caught that 10-pounder on that spinning pole. This is one of the best maybe the best fish catch of the year. It's a great fish catch. And so Justin Atkins, that's a very interesting deal there. And then you got Andy Frybar, Justin Hamner, and Bobby Lane Jr. Justin Hamner, and Bobby Lane Jr., and Brian New. These are guys that are all in order right below Justin Atkins in this East. All of these guys, I don't know what Bobby Lane Jr. is doing. I think he might be one of the shareholders like Ike is, and Bobby Lane Jr. is on the BPT roster for 21. So I don't know that he's trying to qualify for bass.
Right.
But other than that, Brian New is absolutely trying to qualify. Justin Hamner's trying to qualify. Frybar, all those guys are trying to qualify. Interesting aspect here. Patrick Walters has nothing to gain out of this tournament. He's triple qualified for the Classic. He's obviously securing a spot for the Elite Series next year, and nobody's getting kicked out of the Elite Series this year on low points. So everybody's on the Elite Series is coming back next year. They're going to increase their field size with these guys that we're talking about. But Patrick Walters doesn't have a lot to fish for in this Lay Lake Open. Justin Hamner is his boy.
Yeah.
Like, they're boys.
Yeah.
So what you could see, and what I think you might see, is a case where Patrick Walters is literally trying to fish for and help his buddy qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. Because it's legal for people competing in the tournament to share information with each other. That's perfectly legal. So who knows? I mean, I don't think Patrick Walters is going to do anything unethical. He seems like a very upstanding guy. I have zero reason to doubt anything about Patrick Walters' integrity.
Agreed.
But he's going to be trying to help his boy on some level.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I would.
yeah,
And you would.
I was just going to say.
And we all would.
Yeah, we would all, yes.
I mean, is he going to call him over to an area to catch some fish? Probably not.
Right.
But is he going to go, hey, man, you might need to go over and throw this jerkbait on this set of, there's some jerkbait fish on this tree, or there's whatever it may be. I don't know what their pattern they're going to find on the lake.
Hey, you might want to dig deeper in this particular area.
Yeah, drop shot on this bridge area over here, whatever. Like, he's going to, Hamner's going to have a second set of eyeballs on the lake this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and you heard from Ed, these guys talk to each other at these tournaments. Patrick told him exactly what he was doing after day one. These guys discuss what they're doing with each other, and it's a respect for each other. They don't run up on each other's stuff in a tournament. But in this situation where Hamner's trying to qualify for the Elite Series, it's not out of the question that Patrick Walters may back off of a certain pattern or a certain area to allow him to have access to it.
Agreed.
So very interesting. Pull it back up. Let's see if there's any more further down. Oh, Matthew Robertson is another one that's in 12th in the East, but he's in contention for Angler of the Year. He's in 4th or 5th for Angler of the Year on the Open. So Matt Robertson could slide in that way. Brian New, again, he's in 10th. He could move all the way up into 5th place. Now, only 4 qualify, but remember, the top guy is already in the Elite Series. So we're looking from 2nd to 5th in the Eastern standings will qualify for the Elites. And Brian New's in 10th. Matt Robertson's in 12th. So those guys all have 2 ways to get in. Man, it's just...
So Todd Castledine
is in 20th. He'd have to have a lot of things fall in place. If Todd Castledine, another local Texas guy from down there at the Rayburn Toledo area, great angler, if he wins this tournament, and I don't even know what the mathematical possibilities are, he may be mathematically eliminated. But maybe if he wins this tournament and everybody ahead of him struggles, maybe he slides in too.
maybe. I don't know.
It's going to be a very, very fun week. You guys pay attention to Bass Track on the Bassmaster website this week. Find your guys you want to pull for. Watch the live coverage on the last day of the tournament. It's going to go down. It's going to be one more good bass fishing tournament viewing week for 2020 is about to go down. And when it's all said and done, come next Sunday when we're talking to you on this podcast, we'll know who's qualified.
What about next year in the Elite Series when we're not watching them on Bass Track and we're watching them on Fox?
Yeah, they're getting 3 hours of coverage,
right?
Which means there's still gonna be more coverage online.
But what we talked about, so we touched on this last week. Some of the BPT, and again, this isn't a knock, this is just critiquing. Some of those programs are too long. Mm-hmm. So it might end up, I think it'll be a good television program because it's going to be chopped up to where it's pretty action-packed coverage, kind of like in the past.
I think Bassmaster does a better job at their coverage. The Bass Pro Tour coverage of 6 guys fishing or 8 guys fishing for 2 hours for 6 days.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours of coverage times 6.
Right.
It's 12 hours of coverage.
Right.
And it's never more than 8 guys fishing.
Right.
That's the Summit Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, the Summit Cup shows or the General Tire World Champion, whatever the original MLF version, the shows were only an hour long.
Right.
And I thought they were better.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
I liked them better when they were an hour long.
Yeah, I agree.
Live coverage and edited TV shows are totally different.
Right.
Live coverage, it's just 2 different things. There's no doubt about it. For the vast majority of the history of the sport, the thought of watching somebody fish live, other than the most obsessed people like us,
mm-hmm.
the thought of watching somebody fish live sounded horrible.
Yeah.
To most people, to most casual fishermen, to most fishing fans. They didn't want to watch that. But what's going on now is the advancement of the sport. You look at when I was a kid, I didn't know any kids that fished bass fishing tournaments. None. And unless you grew up in an area like Lake Fork, right. Then maybe there was a couple kids that fished tournaments and stuff. But only the most extreme cases did you have kids fishing a bass tournament. And it certainly wasn't a deal where they had a whole season of them.
Right.
Right? And now with the advancement of the sport going down in the college ranks and now in the high school ranks, you have kids that are growing up fishing with their fathers with the purpose of, let me go fish some tournaments with Dad so that I can learn how to compete for my high school team and fish on that team and then compete in college and then maybe someday be a pro. Like, it's a real sport. There's a path to doing it. When I was growing up, I didn't know of a path to doing it. It was like, there was a bunch of dudes that liked to fish, and on the weekends, sometimes they would fish a tournament, but most of the time they were just fishing. And Fishing Guide was like that old stinky dude that like helped people catch fish to put in the freezer and fillet them every day.
Right.
And he had to go out and fish all day and then fillet. It didn't sound like a fun job to me, because I just like to bass fish. Like,
Right.
I'm not a crappie guide and I'm not a striper guide for a reason.
I grew up thinking guides were like catfishing guides.
Yeah, crappie guides. And on Conroe, where I grew up, it was hybrid stripers.
Right.
And you go out there and you catch your limit, you come back to the dock and you got to fillet their fish.
Yeah.
Man, that's hard freaking work. That's not like fun job.
Right.
That's not a fun job. To me, it's not.
No, I agree.
Because I absolutely hate filleting fish.
Yeah,
But-
not fun.
and not over any like moral. I just don't like doing it.
No, yeah, that's
I
completely
physically
fair.
don't like cutting fish up. It's not fun.
It's fair.
So there was no path. There was no legitimate, clearly, easily visible path to moving forward in this as a sport, tournament bass fishing, when I was growing up. And now there's a whole bigger culture with these younger kids that view this as a very legit sport with a very legit path that they can take to do something and be involved in it for their life. You know, look at it as a career path. Look at it as an opportunity to be a sports hero. It's how it's becoming. Well, that's evident by the fact that now we have live coverage going on TV. Because you don't think nothing about, I mean, dudes that are into golf watch golf for like 3 hours.
See, I'd rather watch a guy fish than watch golf, personally.
Dog, I used to be an assistant golf professional, and I would rather watch a dude fish than golf.
Yeah, that's sort of like it blows my mind. But anyways,
But you like NASCAR.
I do love NASCAR. Yeah.
I'm not into NASCAR.
Right. Yeah.
I do not want to watch cars go in a circle for 3 hours.
Right.
Doesn't appeal. If I want to watch NASCAR, I'll watch the last 5 laps. Right. And I know everybody like you that likes NASCAR is like turning over in their grave right now. They're like so mad at me for saying that. Like, that's such an insult to you. But from my perspective, I'm not into the sport. I don't want to watch it. But you do.
Right.
Like, you'll watch NASCAR, and millions of people watch NASCAR for hours and hours and hours. And now we have the opportunity to watch the best in the game fish for hours on live television on a national network. And it is a very, very clear sign. I've heard, listen, we love Luke Duncan. I think the world of Luke. I think he does a great job on his podcast. I think he's a very good guy. Nothing but a fan of Luke Duncan. But I don't always agree with everything he says.
Right.
And I've heard him say something about, is the sport really growing or is it not? And I think him working for TH Marine the way he does, he's looking at more of the sales numbers side of equipment, bass boats being built. Like, he has all those inside numbers that I don't have. So that's what he's looking at when he says, is the sport growing? What I do know is the sport is growing in exposure.
Oh, for sure. There's more eyeballs now than there were, period. End of story.
And it's becoming more of a legitimate sport.
Right.
So to me, the sport is 1,000% undeniably growing. And I think you can take this as evidence. I mean, we have, over 1,000 teams of high school bass fishing in DFW alone.
If the sport wasn't growing, a network like Fox wouldn't be reaching out.
Yeah, I mean, there's 4 divisions in DFW, 4 high school bass fishing divisions in DFW at over 250 a division.
Hey,
That's crazy.
How long before they're televising and running live coverage on those?
I don't know. See, I don't know with the high school fishing. I don't think it'll ever get there. If it does, it's a long ways. Because, I mean, maybe championships or something like that. Because other than the state championship game, we don't even have high school football live on a national network.
Right, yeah.
You don't. So, I mean, high school football, it's obviously, high school fishing's got a long way to go before it catches up to Texas high school football.
But I also, man, with the amount of technology that we're coming out with
But
every
some
single
of it-
day now.
It's not live, but some of them do air.
Yeah.
You know, the Bassmaster, the national high school champion, they air those.
Yeah. Just a little, just throw a little wrench in there. You never know.
That wasn't even a topic we had so much to talk about tonight. We've run so long, and that wasn't even a topic we were supposed to talk about.
Yep. But this will be. I'm gonna get fired from my job this week because I'm gonna be watching Fast Track.
It seems like you're getting fired from that job a lot.
Dude, I'm telling you, anytime there's a major tournament going on,
You always talking about getting fired.
I'll pull up in front of a store and I will sit in my truck for 30 minutes watching Bass Track or live or something before I walk in there. It's crazy.
We got a couple pretty good comments. Greg Perry says, I have Lowrance and Garmin. Garmin's side down in 2D does not come halfway to what Lowrance is. Live side is the deal, though. Exactly. They all have their strengths. They're all different tools, just like Ed said. Live scope definitely drains batteries. I don't doubt it. If the wind stays like today, would you hit another lake or concentrate on an area of fork? Man, with the cold front coming in, these next couple days, I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's going to be hard to catch them on fork. It's going to be hard to catch them on most of your cold water lakes over the next couple days. Really, really hard. Without a doubt, for the next couple days, if I was fishing, I would be highly recommending power plant lakes. Power plant lakes would be the way to go right now, no doubt, to me.
If you're going to stick to cold water, you throwing that jerkbait?
Jig. And that's just, I will throw a jerkbait right now. Yeah,
That's just your preference.
I would rather throw the jig, and I'm going to try to throw the jig more, but I'm not going to say, I'll have the jerkbait tied on.
Right.
Yeah, for sure right now. I would have to in a cold water lake. Spencer Smith, I can't imagine how good all these kids are going to be in 20 years. Man,
It's going to be incredible. You're going to have a bunch of Jacob Wheelers. Like, seriously.
Hey, there is a reason why I have worked obsessively hard in trying to get out in front of things in my business life other than just fishing. These podcasts, social media stuff, my fishing app, I've tried to diversify my revenue stream because, in another, I would say at this point, as long as it's been going, in about another 10 years, there's going to be a whole bunch of brand new fishing guides that are, better than we are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's real. That's going to happen.
I think
we already see some of it with these young guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to the kids I grew up with, and I can't recall any of them whose parents would donate so much time and money into the sport of fishing like they're doing now. And man, that's nothing but notches in the belt, man.
I mean, you look at dude, Jonathan Bowling, Jack York, Eric Wright, when he started,
right.
All these guys are light years ahead of where I was as a fisherman at 20 to 25 years old.
Yeah, for sure.
Every one of them is so far ahead of where I was. And they might be ahead of where I am now, right now.
Right.
They're good.
Yeah.
They're so good, and they're so young. A guy like John Bowling, man, he's 21 years old, dude, or maybe 22 now, but he's 21, 22 years old. Give that kid another 10 years fishing full time. Holy crap, he's going to be so good. Man.
I know. I'm so upset that they came out with high school bass fishing the year after I graduated high school.
Was it the year after?
Yeah, the year after is when it became a thing.
Briarwood High School in Birmingham, Alabama has won the last 3 national championships in a row. Well, I'm sure they have, and that's awesome. But on what trail? Because there's multiple.
Right.
There's the Bassmaster one, and there's the FLW one.
Yeah, don't even get me lying.
Bro, and I'm gonna tell you that THSBA championship, that's as tough as any of them are. There's so many kids fishing so much in Texas, and Texas is such a fishing culture state that, dude, there's kids right here in my town. They're good.
Yeah.
They went to Lake Palestine last year in February and caught 36 pounds.
Stop it.
36 pounds on Palestine in February. Bro, they're so good.
I would hate getting whooped by a kid in a tournament that can't even drive. That would make me so mad. That would make me mad.
Yeah.
But it's gonna start happening.
Yeah. Thinking this is Welsh. Oops. Farron Hansen says, thinking this is Welsh weather. This is absolutely Welsh weather this week. Problem with that is everybody's been thinking it's Welsh weather. Lake Welsh is getting throttled. It's fishing really good, but it ain't going to last long because it's getting throttled.
Dude,
every guide that I know has been on Lake Welsh. Every local, it's getting hammered.
Dude, I got a buddy from Killeen that wants to make a day trip, come up and just fish Welsh.
I know.
And
It's a great lake. I mean, it's small. And the problem with that is Lake Welsh is just small.
Right.
It's so small.
Right.
And it's okay. It handles the pressure pretty good. But, man, not with everything that's going on. And there's so many more people fishing during the week now than there has been in years past.
Right.
Even still, this late in the year, everything. Like it seems like there's a lot more people fishing during the weekdays than there used to be. Well, when you take all that and put it on Welsh 7 days a week, man, and we didn't used to get this traffic on Welsh this time of year. The traffic on Welsh used to come in January and February when everybody started thinking about fishing, but it was too cold to go fish on the other cold water lakes and they didn't want to. They would go to Welsh then. And we may be somewhat to blame for it because we've made videos for several years now, and a lot of it has had Welsh in November with fish spawning and punching grass in December, winning tournaments and throwing Alabama rigs, and you look at what people go out there and do, and that's a lot of what they do. Right. And they're going out in November, which you didn't used to see. Welsh just did not get this crowded in November, and it's been getting fished.
Well, and historically speaking, too, a lot of these local clubs, they start their year out on
in January or February.
Welsh.
Yeah, and they still do, yeah.
Right. So it's been getting whipped on.
And Squaw Creek is shut down, so that'll add popularity towards Little Welsh. It sure will. Monticello being closed for the last couple of years has added popularity to Welsh.
Is there any talks of that opening back
No.
up?
There's been a lot of people that used to traditionally go to Monticello that over the last couple of years have started going to Welsh now. Yeah. Welsh is just getting to where it gets fished hard early.
Have you been to Martin Creek lately?
Going tomorrow.
Dude, I've been on that lake one time, and I had a great time.
It's an awesome lake. I love it. Hey, I'm going tomorrow. I'm going tomorrow. And Fairfield is a cold lake now, too. That's right. Planet Fairfield shut down. It's a cold water lake now. It has been for a couple of years now.
Big Brown.
That Alabama team he was talking about, what was it? It was Briarwood High School. They won the Bassmasters National Championship 3 years in a row. That's crazy.
That's getting her done.
Yeah.
As Larry the Cable Guy says.
Are they fishing in y'all's home lakes? Is that what's going on here? I don't know what's happening. What's the best cold water swim baits for Alabama rigs? Man, the little 6 cent swim baits are really good. The skinnier Kitex are really good too, just to give you another option. You know, Kitech, the most popular one's called the Fat Swing Impact. There's another Kitech bait just called the Swing Impact, and it's just a narrower body but a similar tail, and that's a really good Alabama rig. I like them in about a 3.5 inch size. The smallest 6 cents Divine Swim Bait is the one I predominantly use on my A rig, the 3.3 or whatever it is.
Did I tell you what because I sold my boat when I was cleaning my boat out. Did I tell you what I found? A package of old kickerfish paddle tail swim baits.
The OGs. So for those that don't know, Kickerfish used to be a Texas plastic company that went out of business several years ago now. And what was it called? It's called
Tail Slapper.
Tail Slapper. The Kickerfish Tail Slapper was one of the OG small little 5 inch swim baits that me and this guy, I introduced you to him, and dude, we have caught a bazillion fish on this.
I had an unopened pack of 5.
Did you really?
On my boat.
Dude, I'd pay you $100 for it. I'll pull a $100 bill out right now.
I'm thinking about making a shadow box because
framing it.
Yeah, those might.
You'll never see them again.
Never see another package unopened again. At least that I know of.
Dude, they were the daggum Kitex Fat Swing Impact before that existed. Like Kickerfish Tail Slap, which I don't know. Kitech may have already had the Fat Swing Impact, but they were the ones that I knew about before I ever knew about the Kitex. The Kickerfish Tail Slapper, I've been running those for years.
Dude, you could hold that thing 20 foot away, sneeze, and the tail would wiggle. Like, it took almost nothing.
It had such a wide swing. It did just like the Kitech has that big wide swing. Yes, it was a great bait. I love that Tail Slapper.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that the other day.
Where can I get these Alabama rigs? Alabama rigs that I use are the Smash Tech Alabama rigs, and you can order those off SmashTechBaits.com.
Everybody misses Monticello. I hear you, dog.
Yeah, everybody misses Monticello. We all do, except the kayak fishermen. Oh, there's a dude that caught a guy that, man, and I think I've talked to this guy a long time ago. He's a kayak fisherman, and he used to fish Monticello a lot when I fished there, and he still does. He launches his kayak over the bridge. That's the only guys that can fish Monticello now. He caught an 11-something there this last week. Like a 24-inch, just tall as she was long, 11.
Can you imagine if they opened that thing up for like a week?
Man, give me a day.
Give me a day.
Because once you let me on there, I'm never leaving.
Yeah.
I'm going to be ordering DoorDash to the bridge column, and I'll never leave the lake.
I heard. Yeah.
Just stay forever.
Dude, just call me. I'll run to Walmart and get some sandwiches.
My customers going to have to meet me on the corner of the bridge because they're going to lock me in, and I ain't never coming out.
That's right. That's right. We can be carrying down 5-gallon fuel.
But I heard them kayak guys been hitting it pretty hard. But man,
Even-
you can't put enough kayak pressure on that
Right.
lake to be compared to what it used to have.
That's what
I remember the year Monticello closed. It ended up closing like in August or September, something like that, in the summer. Well, that January, February, March, dude, it was probably the best I'd ever seen it fish. Like, we were going over there and going back under the bridge in Smith Creek. And if you know, when they opened the gates to Sandlin, it dropped the level of Monticello several feet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that took about a third of Smith Creek and made it dry land. So Smith Creek is only 2/3 of the size it used to be if you went to Monticello back in the day. And you would go under there, and there would be maybe like 15 or 20 boats in a little area. I mean, I'm talking about like dudes are everybody's casting at water with somebody else. Like, that's how tight we were. Like, we were all casting the water, sharing it with another dude throwing in the same general area we were. And everybody was catching plenty of fish, and everybody was catching at least some 7 to 8 pounders. And sometimes bigger. Like, it was crazy. You threw a rattle trap, or you threw a chatterbait, or you just a spinner bait or a swim bait. It didn't matter.
Just
It's
something.
February. You just throw it there and wind around in that grass and stumps, and they were loaded up in there for pre-spawn. And good night, son. It was unbelievable. And I've never seen that many boats fish that tight to each other, and everybody's whacking them.
Yeah.
Everybody. It was wild. It was truly, truly wild. I mean, you were catching fish out from underneath dudes' outboard motors. I mean, it was like, here's the pattern today. You run it right beside that prop, and that fish will come up from that prop and eat it. Like, it was dumb how good it was.
Monticello, such a great fishery.
Yeah. Oh, man. I think this is our longest podcast we've ever done.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half.
We're always setting records, bro.
How did
Always.
It's the best fishing podcast there's ever been.
Man. I need to go get a life scope.
And we didn't even do any did he do it or anything goofy today. Like, we kept it all serious.
Awesome.
We talked to an attorney today,
Yeah,
so
we
we had
talked
to
to
keep
it. Yeah, we got to make sure that
zero in on things, keep it tight around
anything we
here.
did wrong was allegedly.
Allegedly.
That's right.
We've got an attorney on retainer now.
That's right.
He's on podcast retainer.
Yeah, y'all don't even know.
Where are we from? We're from Lake Fork, man. You're a Lake Fork guy. We're from the Lake Fork area. I live in Van, Texas. This guy lives down around Tyler. But we're in the Lake Fork area, up here in northeast Texas, out east of the Metro Mess.
The Metro Mess, the concrete jungle.
Yeah, we're a pretty good ways away from that. In fact, where I live, traffic jam means that somebody's cow broke through the barbed wire or something.
That's right. Yep.
Which ironically happens.
Oh, all
Fairly
the time.
often.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's been.
And Luther Jackson is watching from Georgia, the guy that asked us that. He's all the way from GA.
Ooh, boy.
That's great, man. Hey, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Big shout out to the real MVP of tonight's podcast. Besides you guys, of course, Ed Loughran, Bassmaster Elite Series angler, talking with us tonight for a long time, breaking things down in depth. Can't thank him enough for that. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Drop us some comments. Let us know what you thought about Ed's talk tonight. If you got to catch that, Chris, I appreciate you joining us.
You bet.
Most importantly, thank all of you guys for watching like you do. Y'all are responsible for allowing me to make my dreams come true. And I know that sounds like, are we allowed to say gay?
No, I don't think so.
Demonetized. I know that sounds a little emotional, but it's real, man. You guys really do allow me to live the life that I dreamed of by you guys watching the channel and sharing it and participating in it, commenting. Like, everything y'all do allows me to do what I love doing the most. So sincerely, thank y'all very much from the bottom of my heart. Chris, do that thing you do.
Thanks and gig 'em.
Oh, dang it.